Welcome to Putting It Together, the podcast that goes through the entire body of work of Stephen Sondheim, show by show and song by song. My name is Kyle Marshall, your self-described Sondheim expert, and this is a Sondheim adjacent episode. This is because of the huge support I get over on Patreon. If you also want to help, I know that it almost becomes something that you hear in the background or something that you hear every episode and start to tune out, but it really does help me a whole lot be able to continue doing this show. If it wasn't for the support of people over there, there is a great chance that I would have stopped doing this show a few years ago. So if you want to help continue this show, head on over to patreon.com/puttingittogetherpodcast and join the team of great supporters over there. I can't wait to get into this conversation with Gustavo Brunetti about translations of Sondheim. So, Gustavo Brunetti, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Well, thank you for accepting me.
You reached out to me here quite a few months ago, so this has been kind of a long work in progress to organize all this, mostly my fault. The part that fascinated me when you reached out to me is when you let me know that you have done a lot of schooling, got your degree in translation studies in particular. I want to start very broad before we get into talking about specifically about like Sweeney Todd and Sondheim. I want to know why translation was something that you wanted to pursue in the first place.
I think it's something that when you are bilingual, or in my case, I studied English. I started studying English when I was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And by the time I was 18, I started teaching it. And when I went to university, I studied French.
Oh, wow.
And I also studied Spanish. So when you know lots of languages, it's kind of natural to think about the relationships between languages, and translation is something that appeals a lot to when you know literature and you want to translate literature. And one thing I really love is to bring to somebody something I love and show this to somebody. And translation is a great way to do that.
I have a friend who is literally what they call a polyglot. So he knows multiple different languages. He's fluent in 5 of them and knows 3 others really well and is learning his 9th. But he mentions that all the time. Is like, weirdly enough, at least we'll just call them like European languages, just to distill it down. He was making the fact that like once you know one, it's kind of a little bit easier to learn the second and then third and then the fourth. When you start to translate things, it's like you have to really think about it a lot, because it's like maybe this word doesn't exist, or like this is what the feeling is, and really trying to convey what the person is trying to communicate, rather than just a very literal translation, which sometimes doesn't quite capture the feeling of what the person is trying to communicate.
Yes, and this is we're going to go back to that, because in musicals, this is much harder to think about. There are so many moving parts. It's very interesting to me.
Let's get into the musical theater aspect of it. Is this something that you were also interested in at like 10 years old, or was that something that you kind of grew into loving?
I was not. The first musical I really loved, it was by chance. I liked the story of the Phantom of the Opera. In fact, I read the book, and then I heard there was a musical, and I said, "Well, let's see." And it was the 90s, so a friend of mine said his father was going to New York, and I asked him to buy the soundtrack to the Phantom of the Opera. He brought me, and I fell in love with it. For many years, it was my favorite musical, and I'm kind of like this. I like musicals, but I hate 95% of them. But the other 5%, I am obsessed with them. If you give me I haven't memorized the lyrics, but if you give me the lyrics, I can sing all the parts in the Phantom. I was not a theater kid. I don't know how to sing. I took some singing lessons, but it didn't caught on. I didn't really learn it, and it was for a brief time. I like to sing, but I don't know how to sing well. So producing musicals was never something I was interested in, but some musicals really appealed to me. And Sweeney Todd, the first contact that I had with it was with the movie. I was a fan of Tim Burton's, and when he released a music, I was very open to the idea of a musical, a horror musical or something. And I really liked the movie at the time. I listened to the soundtrack a bit, but it was just that. I reconnected with it when Sondheim died and it was very moving listening to your podcast about that.
Right, right.
I was very moved. I could really feel your sentiment. It was very, very, all those homages to Sondheim. And I said, okay, I have to give this guy another chance. And I listened to Sweeney Todd again, and I saw there was a movie, the Into the Woods movie too. I liked it fine. I didn't love it, but I liked it. But then when I started listening to the original recordings of Sweeney Todd, then I really fell in love with it.
Yeah, was there something specific? Because, talking about your love of Phantom of the Opera and now
Yeah.
Sweeney Todd, it seems like you want like those like really big, bold,
Yes, I
like
think
operatic almost musicals.
yes. One thing that I really like about Sweeney Todd is that blood is spilling and boiling.
Right, right.
Everybody, the emotions are so heightened, and this is what I really love about it. And the Phantom is like that too. And not all musicals are like that, and I really like musicals that are very, very emotional, boldly emotional. And I think that Sweeney Todd pulls all the stops. It doesn't mince words and notes and screams. In fact,
Hmm.
this the last staging of the Brazilian version I saw a few weeks ago. This is one of the things that disappointed me about the guy who played Sweeney Todd. I don't know his name, and I think I would rather not say his name because I'm
Hmm.
not saying good things about him. But he was so low energy. I felt like he was kind of not there really. I didn't feel my blood boil.
Like sleepwalking through the story a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, it was too low energy. Maybe in a movie it could work,
Hmm.
but at the theater he should have been broader and larger than life.
Just as a like slight diversion, have you gone afield? Like, have you listened to other Sondheim scores beyond Sweeney Todd, Into the Woods, that sort of thing? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I there are a few of these musicals I don't know well enough.
Hmm.
I don't know. Funny thing happened on the way to the forum. Oh, there will be a Brazilian staging soon.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I may go see it too. I love Company. Company was a musical that helped me a lot because I went through a divorce during the pandemic,
Oh
and
boy. Okay.
it was it was very good for me to come to terms with what was marriage, what was my marriage,
Hmm.
and cherish the good things, accept the bad things, and accept the end. It was really something that motivated me and comforted me a lot.
Okay.
I watched Passion, although it didn't catch me so much, but I'm waiting for
Okay.
your
Well,
podcast to
that's
go
kind of what I
there.
was bringing up about like that large emotion that
Yeah.
you were mentioning there before, because this is going to be airing partway through our Passion season. So
So when you go to Passion, I'm going to delve deeply
for
into
sure.
that. I saw some stagings on YouTube, some for Into the Woods, which I really liked. Some of them are genius. Couldn't get into Assassins, but I try
Right.
to listen to each of them at least once. Some of them catch me more than others.
Well, I think I brought that up in our Assassins season. I question whether or not this had broad international appeal because it is such an American
Yeah,
story that sometimes it's like, I don't know if this is going to play as well, outside of America as it does inside of America.
I agree. I think that
Hmm.
it is about some emotions that are underneath. And I was going to say you Americans, but you are not American.
Yeah.
Americans are very into their presidents, and so when somebody
Hmm.
murders a president, it's something very big. And I don't think it has happened in Brazil. I don't think any president has ever been assassinated. There was one suicide, but not an assassination. And so it's something that doesn't relate to me very much.
Okay, so you mentioned here that you went to school, really focused on translations specifically. You were talking before we started recording here about one of your, sorry, was it your thesis or was it your
My dissertation, my master. Oh, yeah.
dissertation? Thank you.
It's actually in Portuguese, it's the opposite. It's a master's thesis and doctor's dissertation, right? In Portuguese, the cognates are inverted, so it was my master's thesis.
Well, your master's thesis was about translation in comics specifically. I can see now that there's that Asterix book behind
Yes.
you on
Oh,
on the
yes.
shelf.
Yes. It was the
Which
book I studied specifically.
okay, which one is that one? Which is
I think in English it's Caesar's Gift or something like
see,
that.
okay, I was mentioning to you how when I was growing up, because I grew up in Canada, there's a lot of French content that gets given to us, and Asterix being one of them. So I'm actually very familiar with the Asterix and Obelix comics. Weirdly enough, I've never seen any of the movies that they've made out of them, but I know the comic books quite well.
The first one is good. I liked it. The others they each one was a bit worse than the
Yeah, right.
and one thing that comics have some things in common with musicals or something because at the university where I teach translation
Hmm.
and I created a subject. I created a class called translation of modal texts. What is a
Hmm.
multimodal text? It's a text that has verbal and non-verbal language.
Wow.
So comics, music in general, actually, subtitling, dubbing, translation for dubbing, and these are the things I teach in general. So you can lump them together because when you're translating a novel, most of the time you can just say focus on the words, and
Hmm.
it's very easy. We have hundreds of examples of translations that cut a big part of the original novel or add things. And when you are translating a comic, it's very hard for you to say, "Oh, I'm going to tear out a page," because the pages have an order or a panel. You
Hmm.
cannot just omit a panel there. You cannot add a panel. It's much actually you can, but it's much harder. The reader is going to notice that. As
Yeah.
with music, if you cannot just add a line when you're translating music.
Well, that's what's there was a conversation I had specifically around the translation of Sondheim into Spanish because Spanish has I'm gonna get this probably inverted. Either has more or less syllables than what English
More
does to
syllables,
like
yes.
communicate the same idea. So it's like, well, we have to really try and make this work.
Yes, Spanish and Portuguese are very similar languages, and Spanish is very similar to to Portuguese in this aspect.
Mhm.
Words that it's very possible in English to write a whole text with only monosyllabic words. I think that this is impossible in Portuguese. Most words have at least two syllables, and words that have four syllables are very commonplace. Being very linguistically oriented, syllables in English are a bit more complex. You can put many more consonants
Mhm.
into the syllable. In Portuguese and Spanish, not so many consonants, but we use more syllables to compensate for that fact. This is a problem you face when you are translating poetry or anything that has rhythm from English to Portuguese. In fact, there's research that shows that when you translate anything from English to Portuguese, the text gets around 35% bigger. So imagine that in comics, this is something that you have a space for in the balloon. If it gets
Yeah.
35% bigger, we say that the balloon's going to explode. Gonna pop.
It just gets inflated more and more and more,
Yeah,
right?
and sometimes you cannot just inflate it because the image. You cannot just do that. So
Hmm.
I know that in comics translation industry, it's an industry standard to have letters a bit smaller than the
Oh,
original
gotcha.
counterparts. But even so, the translation has to be a bit more concise in
Hmm.
translation, and a lot of information gets lost because that's a choice you have to make.
I know that, I mean, this is not necessarily translation, really. It's probably just my age. Just going back to the Asterix books, I just know that it took me so long. I was, probably, 18 or 19 years old before I fully understood the jokes that were actually put into it because of like there's puns that they're working off of that I just wasn't knowledgeable of. Even Asterix and Obelisk as characters are like punctuation references because they look like those punctuations that I just was not picking up when I was going on. But I imagine the same type of thing when we're just talking about the text, where it's like, what is the most important thing that needs to be communicated here, and what can we kind of like leave off? But invariably, then you are kind of losing part of the actual story.
Yes, translation is a game of loss and gain as well.
Hmm.
As I said, the names Asterix and Obelix in Portuguese, the words are very similar.
Hmm.
So these puns specifically, they are not lost. But every character in Asterix is a pun, and these puns they get lost or they It's very common. The translations in Portuguese, they make other puns, and sometimes they're very successful. Sometimes they're not so much,
Right, right.
and it happens. It's impossible to think, no, I'm gonna get everything that can be communicated from this original work. I'm gonna say original. People who scholars of translation studies, they don't say original anymore. They say
Mm,
source text and target text, which is
sure.
better. It's academically more sound, but I'm gonna say original for brevity's sake here.
Sure, sure.
So a work of art has a lot of possibility of meaning. There is a lot of latent potential meaning there, and it's impossible to translate all these potential meanings. But when you translate, you make newer potential meanings as well. And I think that it was Jorge Luis Borges, the Argentinian writer, who said that I have never read the Odyssey in original Greek, but I've read so many translations that I know the work, I know the piece better than if I had read it in original Greek.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's the part that I've started to become more and more interested in and fascinated by, which is just that the fact that the mere fact of a translation brings something new to it. Like it does become something a little bit different. And that piece then is interesting to study. I think there is a relationship, not that I'm like deeply knowledgeable about this either, but there's a relationship between that and like almost like sampling culture and say like hip hop and rap and stuff like that, where I'm taking something original and putting it and remixing it into something new. Translation is not quite that, but I think there's something similar to it where it's like
There
I'm
is
taking
a bit
something
of
here
that.
and then putting the words of my language into it to try
Yeah,
and
well,
evoke
I
the
can give
meaning.
you an example.
Hmm.
Going a little bit closer to our main subject,
Yeah.
I talk about music translation in my class too,
Hmm.
like general songwriting and song translation. And there is a translation that we call them versions, but there is a version, a Brazilian version of David Bowie's Starman.
Mm.
And a lot of people mock because the lyrics are not exactly what they're saying, but I really think it's a good translation, a good version. First, because the word star in Portuguese is estrela. It's not, it doesn't have much to do, but we
Hmm.
have the verb to be. One of the translation is star. So they use
Yeah.
this word in when David Bowie sings star, Nenhum de Nós, which is the band who did the version, they sing star as well, but it's the verb to be.
Oh, that's
And
so fun.
the lyrics are not exactly what Starman says, but there are bits of it, but there are other bits of other David Bowie songs.
Oh, okay,
So
cool.
they did like a remix of
Hmm.
his over his career and made a new song that has a lot to do with David Bowie says in many of his space era songs. I think it's a very interesting way to make a version.
Sempre estar lá e ver e voltar. Não é mais o mesmo, mas estar em seu lugar. Sempre estar lá e ver e voltar. O todo tem a noite, como a noite vai temer o fogo. Vou chorar sem medo, vou lembrar do tempo de onde eu via o mundo azul.
You've already mentioned the fact that you went and saw this Brazilian version of Sweeney Todd.
Mhm.
So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that kind of very topic of like what is kept, what has changed, how does it become a different type of work?
Yes, well, I said that in translation you always lose something. You may
Hmm.
gain, you not all the time, but good translations they gain a lot too.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think it was, I'm not going to say impossible, but very hard, and it takes time, takes effort, takes talent on the translation part, translator's part as well. Sondheim really knows how to make a rhyme,
Sure, sure.
and translating rhymes is it's very hard because you also want to translate the meaning of what is being said, especially in a music. In poetry, you can go far out sometimes. You can
Hmm.
go further from the literal meaning in the original. But in musicals, many times there things are very very concrete. Things are happening in the scene. One character is communicating something very concrete to the other, and this concrete translation doesn't rhyme. So you have to
Right.
find a way for it to rhyme. And sometimes the rhymes are not interesting. They rhyme, but they're not interesting. And I think that this is the thing that I think I will never see Sondheim translation that really focuses on this kind of rhymes because it's a very difficult part of translating poetry and songwriting.
Well, to his credit, I believe Sondheim is even quoted as saying when his work was starting to be translated to different languages, it was, don't worry so much on the rhymes, worry about the intention behind the lyrics.
I understand why he's saying that because he was the lyricist, but rhymes are so important for the work to be pleasant as well.
Yeah.
And rhyming makes you recall what was before. It makes relationships between words. You think about that. And some rhymes are just impossible, like the coercing the bow.
Right, yeah, there's just no way.
There's no way. You can make a new one, and it takes a particularly talented translator to make these kinds of puns and rhymes too. And sometimes the translator didn't have much time to do that. There's that. Didn't have much time, didn't have much money to do that. He was doing this translation in another one. I don't know. I tried to contact the production company who did Sweeney Todd here, but they didn't get back to me. And there's no place in the playbill who translated it.
Oh, interesting. That's too bad. Like you would think that they would have credited the person who went through and did it.
Yeah, there is a possibility that the director made the translation.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's something that happens. I wouldn't say frequently, but it happens. But there's no one credited at the playbill, which is a pity. So these puns and rhymes, I know that they are going to be lost sometimes.
Right.
Not all the time. Sometimes it works very well. But it's funny. I was obsessed with Sweeney Todd for some time. Then coincidentally, right as I was obsessed, both your podcasts got to the point of Sweeney Todd.
Right. Okay.
And that was when the first staging I saw was out. I don't know how to say it. But I could see it. It was at the height of my obsession with the play.
And so that was in Brazil as well?
In Brazil. So it was staged in Portuguese, translated in Brazilian Portuguese. And I had the lyrics very fresh in my mind. So it was possible for me to listen and compare the translation to the original as I was watching the play. When you're translating music, as I said, you have to worry about the rhythm, about the melody, about they say they have a word which is singability. Like you're not going to use a very closed vowel like E or U when there's a very high note, because saying ooh is much more difficult than saying ah.
Right.
So you have to think about that too. So as I said before we were recording, there are many moving parts when you are translating music in general. But in musicals, it's even worse because it has to match the scene. It has to match what's going to happen before later in the play, but also what happened before. So there was one song that really called my attention, which is Wait. Remember, we said that in Portuguese and in Spanish, the words are longer. And you have
That's right.
Wait. There is only one note that she sings for a long time. Wait. In Portuguese, literal translation would be espera. So 3 syllables for that, and it doesn't sound good. So the translator did something that I think it's acceptable, which is to say vem, which sounds like wait a bit, but it means come, like come to me or something. And in the context of the lyrics, it works. However, 3 or 4 scenes later, the judge comes, and then Anthony bursts in, and the judge goes out, and nothing works for Sweeney. And he has that outburst, and Mrs. Lovett says, "I told you to wait," but she didn't.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
So the translator didn't account to the fact that Wait is a very important song because it has relation to what she said later.
Yeah, not to make this all about me, but I think that was one of my favorite discoveries, which I'm sure other people have done decades ago, how important Wait is to the entire score, because it actually sets up musical themes and words and phrases that come back into the story like 4, 5, 10 songs later. So you really have to make sure that that song
Yes, and it's
hits.
one of the most beautiful melodies in the play as well. Right? The beautiful score, beautiful singing too. By the way, the actress who did Mrs. Lovett, she was the same in both stagings I saw. Really
Okay.
good. Loved her
Oh,
Mrs.
good.
Lovett. She was more like Patti LuPone, a little less like Angela Lansbury,
Gotcha.
more like trying to be a little more sexy. But it
Hmm.
works. It worked a lot. It worked very well, actually. And when I saw this, wait, I was kind of holding my breath because I thought I was going to say, oh, when it comes to a little priest, it's going to be a disaster then. But it wasn't. The translation was really good.
Oh, good.
Of course, all those professions were changed by other things.
Yeah.
Both of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Some could be preserved. The translator could make some puns. The rhymings were good. They were good. They were not as interesting. Like deceased and priest. They are very
Hmm.
interesting rhymes. In Portuguese, it's not as much as Spanish. Spanish is a little bit more than that. But what you write is what you pronounce as well.
Hmm.
Pronunciations are very close, which is like the other side to English.
What were the professions? Just because I'm curious, what did some of the professions get changed to?
It was not a priest, it was a pastor. It was not an admiral, it was a sailor, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Okay.
There was a part that it would be impossible, and I think they cut it, which is like with or without his privates, which
Yeah.
is a
Right. Right. Right.
great joke. Many jokes were lost, and some. This was something that disappointed me a bit in this last staging, is that some jokes were lost because I don't think they realized they were jokes really.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And sometimes visual jokes too. One part I really love about the original, not the original. I have the recording with Angela Lansbury and George Hearn. A part I really like is when they are singing the Johanna, the reprise in the second act,
Yeah.
and then Sweeney's killing his clients right and left. And there was one scene in which the guy enters, and then comes the daughter, and
Hmm.
Sweeney looks disappointed. In the last staging I saw, the daughter comes first. There's
Oh,
no joke there.
weird.
I thought it was a missed opportunity, and it's not something hard to make. This is what I was disappointed. And some jokes that I feel that they didn't realize they were jokes. And
Yeah.
I think
Right.
that
Right.
maybe I am being too demanding because, as I said, I was listening to your podcast and you delved into the lyrics very deeply. So many jokes
Hmm.
I hadn't realized they were jokes. I realized by listening to your podcast. You and your guests like really, really going into the lyrics. So maybe I
Yeah.
was too demanding with the translator.
All we ask is that you spend 45 hours going through the Sweeney Todd
Yes.
lyrics and picking them apart.
Yes, and I'm not gonna say that if I were the translator, I would do a better job. I'm not saying
Mhm.
that, but I am a scholar, so criticizing things is what I do choose.
Correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I get paid to do. So, a couple other questions, just for the production side of things. Did either of these productions include the judge scene with
No,
when him singing Joanna? No.
no,
Okay.
they were very very short, and there was one song that it was very weird that they cut in this last staging I saw. The God Get That's Good was a bit shorter, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember now which was. I felt that Greenfish and Linus Bird was shorter too, but maybe it was only a feeling.
Right.
And
Right. Right.
also the context. I'm sorry, not the contest. They didn't do the tooth part, just the
Yeah. Yeah. Most productions don't do the
yeah.
tooth part anymore either, but
If I were to make a TV version of that, I
of
would put
course.
all of them because I think that one thing I love about the tooth thing is that it's very macabre, and this is what I
Right.
love about the cruelty and the
Yeah.
musicality at the same time. This is one of the things I love about Sweeney.
It's also one of my favorite jokes on that original album, right? Where they say like, "I don't have a pain." It's like, and he slaps him. It's like, "Well, you do now."
Now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that in God That's Good, a lot is happening. Oh, by the way, the first time I saw it with a friend of mine who had seen the movie. This time, I saw it with my girlfriend. She didn't know Sweeney Todd, and
Okay.
she's not proficient in English. She had no idea what was happening. I just told her that it was a musical I loved, and that there was some horror elements because she doesn't like horror. So I just told her, look, there's somebody's very light on horror. It's not like she's squeamish or anything, but she
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
like the genre. And then I asked some things to her, like, do you understand why? And she didn't get some things. She
Right.
didn't get the point of Greenfinch and Leonard Bird. And I think that it was sung too quickly. Maybe it was for time. Maybe it is a long play, but after all, she didn't understand the point of God is good, the God that's good.
Hmm.
So I think that some things are the worst part is in London, which is my favorite song. A bit too fast, so many jokes
Oh,
were lost
interesting.
too.
Okay.
It is a fast song, of course, but I think that in Portuguese there are so many syllables that you can get lost in it, and
Yeah, you
especially
almost
because
have to like slow down the tempos a little bit just
yes,
to.
and it's something I don't know how English native speakers feel about that because Mrs. Lovett doesn't speak in standard English, Cockney, right?
It is, yeah.
And in Brazil, the translator chose to make her not speak standard Portuguese as well. But sometimes
Hmm.
non-standard Portuguese is hard to understand. You have to, what did she say? Oh, okay. And you missed the next the next line.
Yeah, and then you miss the two lines.
Yes. And my friends, for example, was translated like Meus Amores, which is my loves. And I don't think that it really translates the relationship Sweeney has with his razors.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
One thing that I noticed too, when he says, "At last, my right arm is complete," and both Luke Hearn and George Hearn were left-handed.
Left-handed,
So,
yeah.
but the in the first staging, the Sweeney was right-handed, and he said, "At last," in Portuguese, of course, he said, "My right arm." The last staging, I saw he just had my arm is complete again, but he was right-handed too.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yes, I think that maybe what I feel like is that the people who staged the production didn't know very deeply Sweeney as a play. Didn't
Right,
know
right.
the lore about it, or didn't know. But I think it was good considering all that.
If you were to compare the two of them, I know this is like trying to cast your mind back a little bit, but like, was the first production or the second production more successful for you?
The first one, and it's
Mm.
funny because the actor who did Sweeney in the first staging I saw is a big Brazilian star, TV star
Mm.
here. So I wasn't expecting much, but I thought he was a very good Sweeney. He
Yeah,
was
yeah.
emotional. There's a part I really love, which is the no that Sweeney says right when he recognizes that the bigger woman was Lucy.
Yes, yes.
And Luke Hearn in the recording, his no is so deep, so moving.
Mhm.
It never fails to make me like I have a knot. And the first actor, the TV star, did that. The second
Mhm.
one, it was a no, like as I said, he was very low
Right,
energy.
right.
It didn't move me as much. But the
Mhm,
first
mhm.
one was more successful. I think that the first one was the stage was same level as the audience, and the actors were they were sometimes they walked very near the audience and through the audience. The audience was kind
Mm.
of all around the stage. And the second one was a normal theater. Everybody was in front of the stage. There was no. I didn't feel like I was as close. And to be fair, I was only bought the tickets last minute, and I got like the last seats in
Sure, sure, sure.
the first of the most distant seats in the house. But I
Mhm.
didn't feel as connected with the actors and as the first time. And I thought that the orchestra also felt more vibrant in the first one. Both stagings were with 9 piece, as
Okay.
they were not big productions, which is something I really would like to see a full blown production
I
one
know.
day.
Even if
Because
it was just like a concert or something like that, I feel like Sweeney Todd of
yeah,
all of them are the ones I really want a full orchestra for. Like I want to be like
yeah.
inundated with sound if I'm sitting in the theater with
Yes,
it.
and the last part, the last ballad of Sweeney Todd, the orchestra goes crazy. It's so
Yeah,
great to
yeah.
listen to the recording like that. And in both stagings I saw, it was not the same because the musicians can do only so much.
Now, I know you were saying that like you didn't want to step on toes and stuff like that, but if you were given the assignment to translate just one song from Sweeney Todd, what is the song that you would like to have a crack at?
If I had a lot of time, A Little Priest.
Okay.
which is this is a song I show to some of my English students to
Mhm.
show pronunciation of words, because Brazilian speakers, when they start learning English, it's very common to pronounce all the letters because we do that in Portuguese.
That's right.
So the simple past, for example, you would say wanted, but you would say deceased and not deceased. And Brazilian students, they tend to say deceased. They tend to use to pronounce the e.
Yeah, yeah.
So I show these songs to them to show, look, these words, they rhyme, so this is the same pronunciation.
Mhm.
I think that this is the one I would try to translate first, but my friends as well. I think that it's a beautiful song, and there's a lot being said in very little. This is a it's a challenge. That's the thing.
For sure.
Although my favorite song is "The Worst Spies in London," I think it's my favorite Sondheim song. Yeah, because I think it's so funny, and at the same time it's so disgusting.
And definitely, if you have a great Mrs. Lovett, you know, her smacking the
Yes.
bugs and stuff like that adds to
I,
what's
I
being
think that
said.
my favorite part is when she is criticizing the other pastry maker for using cats, but she wouldn't do it in her shop because pussycats are quick.
Yeah, yeah, they're too fast to catch. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's a perfect introduction to a character. You see
Mm.
all of Mrs. Lovett in one song,
Yeah.
and the translation should have to do that as well. And it's a very big challenge.
So Sweeney Todd's come there a couple of times. Forum is coming here soon, you mentioned. Is there another Sondheim production that you hope is mounted in Brazil at some point?
I really hope they make company, which I
Mm.
like. As I said, that it was important to me, and I think it's a pipe dream, but I think that I would really like to see Follies could be a very good production in Brazil, because we had a very big tradition of review on stage, and it went till the 70s during the dictatorship. To come back to to my subject, I'm not going to say it's my favorite subject, but I'm kind of tired of that. But it comes back so often. Like maybe you know that I'm Still Here is nominated for Academy Awards.
I was going to bring this up. I'm literally seeing that later this afternoon.
Oh, it is about the dictatorship.
I
So
know. Yeah, yeah.
the subject just comes up. But during the dictatorship, there were a lot of review shows, and I think that it could be nostalgic for a few people here in Brazil too. Although these people would be quite old, they would be elderly today. I don't know if they would see the show. They will go see the show, but I think that I wouldn't say a real translation, but an adaptation to what was made in Brazil.
I was going to say, you could do like the I'm Still Here, yeah, that's what the song is
Yeah.
called. I'm Still Here, but with different references, different
Yeah.
reference points in it, right?
Very easily, very easily. And I think that the guy who is making the funny thing, a funny thing happened on the way to the forum. He's a famous guy who has done lots of musicals. He did Godspell
Hmm.
and some others. I can't remember right now. And he is very well versed in Brazilian theater tradition.
Oh, good.
So I think that he could be a very good director for Follies too. His name is Miguel Falabella. He's a good comedian, a good writer too. I think he could make a good staging of Follies. I think this is the one I really, really would like to see.
I still hold out hope, although it's becoming less and less, that Follies does get a movie version done of it at some point. I mean, the perfect time would have been in the 70s, to be perfectly frank. You could have pulled some old Hollywood stars and like really commented on that type of thing, but you have to convince probably a production company to give you $30 million for a movie that's probably not going to make all that much money.
The scope would be crazy, and it's been in development hell for years.
Mhm.
Because when I found out about when I started listening to Follies, I saw the name of there's the Imelda Staunton
Yep.
version was shot. There's a pro shot,
It's a really great
is.
production that they filmed. Yeah,
and the director who directed it was slated to direct the movie.
he was, and then this has not gone anywhere.
Yes, I can understand. It is a difficult sell.
Here's my actual hope. So whether you like her movies or not, Greta Gerwig is kind of on a roll here right now. Huge success with Barbie, and she's going to make these 2 like Narnia films apparently.
Really?
Yes, that were originally supposed to air just on Netflix, but she has forced them to release them into theaters. So she's like throwing her weight around a bit. If those are also successful, she has said straight up in multiple interviews how much she loves Stephen Sondheim, and I am holding out hope that they're successful so she can like cash in her blank check. My suspicion is that she's probably more of a little night music fan, but she could also make Follies, I think, too.
My dream adaptation would be Rachel Bloom doing Company.
Oh, that would be fun. That would be really fun.
I think that she could make the comedy and the staging, because Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, if anybody is a musical fan and hasn't seen this show, do it now. It's a great show, great musical scenes, and I think that Rachel Bloom would be the perfect person to adapt, especially if they make Bobby a woman. And I think that the woman who Donna Lynn Chaplin, yes, this is her name.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
She also did Sweeney Todd. She was Pirelli in the Michael Cerveris and Patty LuPone.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I think she would be such a great Joanne.
Yeah, well, this is now just got me thinking of all the adaptations I would love to see.
And who would adapt it?
Yeah, exactly. That's always the question, is like, who's the perfect person to adapt it versus who would they cast? And there's all this other talk that has to happen. Gus, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day here to come and talk about this. This was a lot of fun. I'm always on the hunt for other adaptations that are going on out there. There was, of course, what I'm calling like Mexican Sweeney Todd, which I've been told through the grapevine that there might be a recording happening of that at some point. I'm also one of the ones who, even though they changed the fundamental story, I do really like the Antonio Banderas Company recording. I think it actually I really like listening to it, so I want more of that. I'd like to hear more like professional recordings of the work in different languages. For me, as an English speaker, and it's really the only language I can speak fluently, it actually makes me focus on the music more than the lyrics, which in English I'm often just listening to the lyrics more, and it just makes me appreciate it in a different way. So I want more adaptations.
That's a great point. Thank you so much, Kyle. I hope it was informative. I hope it was, instead it was fun, but I hope it was something interesting for our listeners too. And if I see funny thing when it's staged, later I'll get in touch.
Yeah, come back and then we'll because talking about like intricate rhymes and like puns and stuff like that score is full of them. So sometimes I wonder how they're going to actually work with that. I wouldn't recommend it, to be honest with you, even though I do like Zero Mostel. The movie version isn't very good because they cut out like 90% of the songs. They keep like 3 or 4 of them.
I know we've winding down already.
Yeah.
One of the things I don't like about the movie nowadays, now that I know the play very well, is that I feel like Tim Burton didn't want to make a musical. Everything was
he
music.
Straight up said he didn't, basically.
Yeah. So if he could cut all the songs from the movie and just make a straight up horror movie, he would have. So and I think that the last time that the Ballads of Sweeney Todd comes back after Toby kills Sweeney Todd, it's so important. It's what wraps up the play. Yeah. And in the movie, it just fizzles out. I think it's the point.
Well, while I don't think there's going to be a new film version of Sweeney Todd anytime soon, I will say that is exciting, at least in the short term, over like the next, I'm going to say 5 to 7 years. With the success of Wicked, as it has been worldwide, what excites me is that I think that people are going to be a little bit more willing to be like, well, actually, if you get someone who really likes the source material and wants to put everything in, there's a market for it. So I'm hoping that will convince some people like, actually, we don't need to cater to the lowest common denominator here. If we just lean into what this is, the people will come. You have to pick the right material, of course, but still.
My dream production would be a 2-part HBO series with all the songs and all the blood and all the cruelty and everything. Yeah. This would be my dream production.
Just lean into that macabre a little bit more. That's the other thing about the Tim Burton version, which is also, I think some people hate that movie. I still like the movie for what it is. But one of the things that was just an interesting take, I guess, a take that I don't agree with, but like, while there are absolutely comedic moments, and there's even some deaths that are comedic moments in that show, I think it's important to show like, The blood isn't always funny, I guess is what I'm trying to say
Yes.
here, which I think that Tim Burton leaned a little bit too far into like, oh, this is all funny versus like, no, this is actually pretty dire and grim what we're about to see here.
Yes, I think that Mrs. Lovett's death should be horrible.
Horrifying, yeah.
I think that she should scream a bit inside the oven, you know, so that Sweeney really sees what he's doing and feels it. And everybody feel like, oh, did she really deserve to be burned alive?
Right.
Like this is what horror is. And I think that a new production should lean into that.
Yeah.
And not to be so desaturated. Come on. It's almost gold. The movie goes,
Yeah, give me some color back.
yes, very red, blood red.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you again.
Thank you, Kyle.
De gosto nem se deve comparar.
Dona Lovett, mas que belo ponto, tão
Pra
sublime e
que
prático e ainda assim
desperdiçar?
apropriado. Dona Lovett, como eu vivi por tanto tempo sem você, é
Pense nisso,
poético,
muitos amigos vão vir aqui pra
quase é profético. Quem vai negar os maus que esse mundo faz?
Qual é o som?
Ranger dos dentes e visão demais.
Sim, senta, não tem valor.
O homem do homem é o lobo, então.